approach, but it's the nature of the beast we're working with when we deal with kids with learning disabilities. And specific learning disability, just for your information, is the most common disability that we find with kids. Two main purposes of the IEP: reasonable educational goals for your child. So we have goals, 1 year, it's a 1-year contract. So this IEP only goes for a year. And services in the district, the services, when we put it in here, we need to follow it. This is a legally binding document. We can't put things in here that we can't back up. All right? I'm going to skip through this slide and the next. These are all the sections that we're going to go through. All right, your turn to answer a question. Let's pull out our IEP, and the first page is what I'm going to. Now, unfortunately, I had no way to be able to do this anonymously. Those of you that are in school districts around here, most of the school districts are not using a form that looks like this. They use DARTS. DARTS is an IEP writing program that BLAST created, and it is all over the state. Basically, school districts around the state are buying our program for DARTS. So most of the districts use DARTS, which means it doesn't look like this. It's the same components, it's just presented a little differently. I know that Canton does not use DARTS. They use a program called Performance Tracker. And I know Muncie also uses that program, and I'm pretty sure, Muncie down there, they use this. Loyalsock uses the Performance Tracker. So this is what you'll find on the Patan website. The front page is just demographic information. That's all it is. Student's name, the date of the meeting, implementation date, duration of services, date of birth, age, grade, anticipated year of graduation. Pretty self-explanatory right there on the front page. Now mind you, the evaluation process has already occurred and we said, all right, kiddo's eligible, so we come into this document. That little box will remain empty unless, and we'll talk about this, if I don't, please remind me to. The box is for revisions. Revision is a change we can make as a district, with your permission, to an IEP during that 1-year cycle. And we would always notify you when we do that because you need to be in agreement with us. We don't need to hold a meeting for that. We can do it over the phone. And then the box below there is the dates of the revisions, who was involved with it, and what sections we changed. So that's what's referred to as the demographic page. We then get to my question, which is, what are procedural safeguards and why are they important in the IEP process? Who wants to answer that?
It's your rights as a parent, basically. That's the procedural safeguards.
Yep. How often do we have to present them to you?
Every single time, right?
Once a year.
Once a year.
Once, really?
It
Yeah.
used to be every meeting.
CEI is every single
It
time.
used to
you're
be
gonna
every
do
meeting,
action.
but they stopped that a few years back and
Oh,
said one time a year they have to give you that paper.
95% of the parents, this may be something you want to talk to them about, will say, I don't want them, I can wallpaper my house with them. And they really don't look at them, and there's some good information in there. I'm just going to let you know, none of us know it all. Even us that have the degrees and are doing that, we don't know it all. And I was telling Robin earlier, one of the things I do to kind of protect myself in the districts I work in, I want to know what the folks are telling you as parents. So when I'm going into a meeting, I know how. So that Educational Law Center packet that she has back there, I call that my black book, because it's how the attorneys are telling you telling you the parents what to do. Okay, so I use that and the packet where you look at the federal regs. That's the other thing you don't want to get confused. IDEA is the federal regs, but the state has developed their own set of rules to comply with IDEA, and they're different.
And IDEA means?
Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
So
by the way, Eric, just let everybody know, we actually have a copy of procedural safeguards in our resource book that's on our table every month. So if you don't have one, if you lost yours, if you need to go and find information, we have that here so that you can look at it.
when you go to request your child to be evaluated for the first time, you're going to get what they call a permission to evaluate, PTE, and that's where they should be sent out in the mail with those. And we have you sign, let's get to those, we'll go to the back of the first page, the second page. Oh no, we're not there yet. Okay, hold on, we went ahead. Let's go to the second page. The second page is the signatures. And I always tell parents, you're not agreeing to anything here. You're just saying, hey, I was in attendance for this meeting. And they're just all the common rules. in the IEP meeting. If my speech therapist can't make the meeting, I should be presenting you with a waiver. Or, meaning you're gonna give me permission to have the meeting without the speech therapist. Now, I do not, if it's not a required member of an IEP team, I don't need to offer that to you. Respectfully, I should. But please understand, there may be times just in the hectic schedule you have that you don't realize the speech therapist is not gonna be there. They should always have their updated data in there, because one of the boxes you check is, yeah, did we review the data or didn't we? And it should be yes, but you have to check a box that says, yeah, I'm okay with having this meeting without them present. So if they're not a required member, and don't ask me who all the required members are, I know I can actually have an IEP meeting without you being there. I won't ever do that, unless it's a parent that I've documented that I've tried to call 150 times, and I can't get them in, but I go to houses. I'll come out to a house to get signatures, and I've had to do that on more than one occasion, but I don't like to proceed forward without you, but I will. So please keep that in mind.
Yeah, that's something that we should all be aware of. We need to be at these meetings. When I was advocating, there were a lot of parents. I had a classroom with 13 special education students. The teacher said I have 3 parents who attend the meetings. And I think because they don't understand how important it is, and they're intimidated by it because they don't understand it, so they don't go. So it's so important that we're there and we participate.
Yes, yep. Required members, I'm gonna try to ring this off the top of my head. The LEA, the person in charge of the department, so it's either gonna be me or a building principal can act as an LEA. In some districts, the school psychologist can.
Can you explain what an LEA is?
I'm sorry,
The only
LEA.
thing I know is that they're the holder of the monies, that's all that I've been told.
Simple way to think of it, it's the school district.
Okay. Whoever will be paying for said service.
You got it,
Right.
you got it. Now, where does that get tricky? Here's where it gets tricky. Your child is in my Montoursville Blast classroom. And it's in Montoursville, I have an autistic support classroom that uses the CLM, Competent Learner Model, which I stole your one handout because a big thing I'm hearing is they want this ABA with these autistic kids. I did some research. CLM is based on ABA, but I don't think that message is out there. But anyway, so let's say you as a parent, you go to Loyalsock, and you want your child's got autism, and you want to be involved in a CLM, Competent Learner Model program. You need one autistic support. What happens is, I am in charge of the teacher in that classroom because it sits in Montoursville School District. All right. However, the special ed director of Loyalsock, because your house lives in Loyalsock, is the LEA, not me, because you live in her district, and any decisions on this IEP need to be approved by her because she's got to come up with the money to provide those services. So sometimes you'll maybe see me and Williamsport's special ed director, or me and Muncie's special ed director, okay? So yeah, just think of LEA as your home school. That's the best way for me, the local education agency.
Eric, don't they also sometimes tell us that the LEA can be anyone who's authorized by the district to make the decision? Because sometimes I've sat in meetings where they've said the principal or the special ed director was also qualified to represent as the LEA. Is that accurate?
That's a great question. I don't know that I've ever found the research or the information out there that says that. I just assumed anybody with an administrator, because if I can't make them, I get the principal. I don't know how some school psychologists can and some can't.
Right.
I don't
That's
know.
who's at mine is a school psychologist.
Yeah.
Was it an IEP meeting? Okay.
Yep. Yep. I've sat in meetings where it was another whole individual. It wasn't someone from high up in the administration. It was someone from the school itself. And they
Oh.
said they were qualified, they were authorized to make the decision at the meeting.
The only
Yeah, I don't know
time-
what the certificate, I don't know.
The only time that the special education administrator was there was when he first went to school. After that, it's always been the school psychologist.
May I ask what school district you're
Southern
in?
Tioga.
Southern Tioga. Who was your old superintendent? Or who is your superintendent? It wasn't
Now?
Was it Dr. Bowers? Was he Southern Tioga?
Mm-mm.
No? Okay. Because that's who came to Montoursville. It must have been Northern Tioga where he was at.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all flavor and taste. Here's my MO, and you can ask anybody in Canton and Montour. Well, one of my professional goals this year is I want to be at 95% of my IEP meetings. I need to be there. Because I'm going to tell you right now, in some cases, no district, I have the principal certification, and a big misconception that I had, and it's important for you to know this, okay, is us special ed supervisors, we're out on our own little island. I don't care if you're the principals, they don't have all the knowledge. Superintendents, they're relying on us, and they say, look, we only want to hear from you if we're going to have a parent coming at us, or if there's going to be a large chunk of money involved, and you say, yeah, we got to make the move here. Okay, now I'm not saying that I'm not saying that's the case. Having the 2 certifications like I have, a principal certificate and special education degree, I'm a rare breed. You don't usually have both. It's usually one or the other. Okay, and I didn't realize until I went to Canton and became in as an administrator, I'm asking these principals questions, and they're like, oh, they end up asking me, the superintendent, they don't know. You know, so we're out. So that's why that's why I like that BLAST has gotten out there and gotten into so many districts, because we're all, you know, we're a close supervisory group, and we share these things with one another. So that's important. Okay. Went over the demographics. So procedural safeguards, it's on the 3rd sheet here, page 3 of 14. You're just signing there again, and I tell parents, we're still not agreeing to anything. I need you to sign here to say that I've at least offered them to you. If you choose not to take them, that's fine, but I've offered them. Okay. Whoops. Page 4, special considerations. These are the 5 questions that, or I'm sorry, there's what, 6 there. Is your child blind or visually impaired? If they don't have glasses, don't count here. Do they need visual services through the IEP? It's a yes or no question. Deaf or hard of hearing, communication needs. If your child has a speech and language impairment, that's where we check yes for speech and language. Assistive technology, do they need maybe an iPad to communicate, a Dynavox, I don't know all the AT devices, but anything like that, if they need that, we would check yes there. Limited English proficiency, meaning is English not the first language? If it's not, then they could be a student that qualifies under limited English proficiency. And oh, by the way, most of the special ed directors, not only do they have special ed in 504, they're also your ELL, English language learners directors too. And then the last one, probably the most important one, is the behaviors impeding learning. If that's checked yes, we better be looking at addressing behaviors. And what's nice about the DART system is when you check that yes, that triggers, we need to be doing a functional behavior assessment here, FBA, so we can create a positive behavior support plan, PBSP. Okay, and that can be another discussion for another night, the functional behavior assessment first. But that's page 4 in a nutshell. Next question. Oh, I gave it up. If behaviors impede the learning of your child or the children within the classroom setting, what should IEP team consider? I already gave you that answer. The interesting question here is, and I struggle with this, but at what point does the regular ed kid have a right, or the parent of the regular ed kid? When is their right infringed upon because school district's trying to do A, B, and C through the functional behavior assessment, and it's interrupting the entire classroom. Oh, and by the way, I remember I have to offer FAPE and LRE. And you're coming in at me saying, look, I want inclusion, I want inclusion, I want inclusion. You know, they become the challenging cases. Kid's crawling around in the classroom and strikes another kid with his foot, kicks him in the jaw. Now I'm dealing with a regular ed parent, hey, look, what's the deal here? You can't control Johnny? You know, so that's a discussion maybe that the principal and I need to have. And that gets sticky. That gets sticky, okay? And we said that's the positive behavior support plan. Probably the biggest chunk of the IEP is what we call the present level of academic achievement and functional performance. And on this document, it is page 5 of 14. And all I've done is bulleted each component of it. The first bullet is the academic achievement. And I gave you an idea of what are some of the results, what are some things you may see under there. You may see your child's PSSA results. You may see progress monitoring data if it's an academic goal. You may see benchmark assessments. A benchmark assessment is an assessment that you give multiple times throughout the year to see where that kid's grown from. Usually you give it around September, then you give it around maybe Christmas, right before Christmas break, then maybe February, and the fourth time you give it right before the PSSA. Why do you do that? Well, because we want to know, they may tell us where they expect your child to score on the PSSA. Okay? So that's academic stuff. The first paragraph is generally some background information in regards to Johnny being a fourth grade student diagnosed with this and that. Functional achievements, the next. Results from a functional behavior assessment. Progress towards current goals, if it's a behavior goal, you might find under here. Any behaviorally related stuff? Just really quickly, functional behavior assessment. We see patterns in behavior as a district. One event may not constitute this. I kind of like to go into 3 before I do this. I'll call you in and I'll say, hey, look, we're seeing this behavior, this issue. We want to conduct a functional behavior assessment. I'll get the IU folks involved, my team of teachers. And again, you could talk on this all night, but basically what we do is over a 7 to 10 day period, analyze your child's behavior through charting information. And then our big thing is we want to find, this is back to that applied behavioral analysis. What's the antecedent? What's causing this thing? What's the behavior? We'll usually target 2 or 3. What's the consequence of the behavior? Why are they doing the behavior? And then the fourth thing is, all right, what interventions are we using? And are those interventions working? And then after we do that, we have 60 days to look at the 7 to 10 days. After the team, we come together and we analyze that data and come up with a positive behavior support plan, which means there's a behavior goal in the IEP. Transition, if the student's above age 14. I think, Robin, maybe you can confirm this. Here's a difference in IDEA and the state's rule. Everybody here thinks you need to start addressing transition at 14. You really don't. It's 16. We address it at 14. Now, I'm not sure if Pennsylvania's directing us. Again, I haven't looked in a while. I'm not sure if that's a Pennsylvania directive, but I know IDEA, I believe, says 16. Pennsylvania may have said 14. Is that how it is?
Yep.
So we'll address it at 14. First 3 asterisks are the 3 areas we address: post-secondary education, employment, and independent living. What's life going to look like educationally after high school? What's employment going to look like? And what's independent living going to look like? We do not need to formally address all 3. This is a glaring weakness right now where attorneys are attacking school districts. And they'll tell you, we'll attack your transition plan to get what we want. So school districts, we're being very proactive and we're being trained every 2 or 3 years on, I think it's indicator 14, how to write a good transition service. You address the 3 areas here. The next section is the transition grid. You put the information there. You make sure within the transition grid, the IEP goals are documented. And you have SDI, specially designed instruction, that are aligned to those, to achieve those transition goals. Okay? And it's not just student input, it's parent input. And I've had this. And I will document this in the IEP. And I'm going to just make it very obvious. But let's say we have a child with a severe intellectual disability and mom thinks he can go to Harvard. Okay, well the reality is I need to know as a leader of that department and as a teacher, right, it's difficult. That's a difficult conversation sometimes to have with a parent. But I will put mom's intentions in the IEP. I will also then list a statement that the school district doesn't feel maybe that that's a realistic or attainable goal, but could maybe look at an alternate post-secondary education program, like maybe we have Hiram G. Andrews in Johnstown. That may be something that we would look at, which is a college for kids with disabilities. Okay, but they're difficult conversations to have with parents, but I can't put something in there that says I'm going to prepare them for Harvard if I know up front I can't get them prepared for Harvard. I don't want to leave the parents under give them that false hope. So make sure all 3 of those areas are addressed. Whoops. Next section, parental concerns. We'll ask you at the meeting maybe, if we didn't talk to you before, and hey, do you have any concerns about what's going on in school? And whatever you tell us, we'll pencil it in there. How the child's disability affects involvement and progress in the general education curriculum, looking at least restrictive environment. Well, his emotional disability negatively affects the behavior, which is why he can't sit in the 3rd grade classroom. His strengths that the child has, and academic, developmental, and functional needs related to the student's disability. And you'll just see a short blurb in there, generally speaking. That's the big chunk of the IEP. That's where all of your updated, up to the date stuff is gonna be listed. What's going on in that point in time. And it'll summarize what the last years looked like up until the IEP meeting. Here it is. When must we provide transition? I put the slide in. Beginning at age 14, a student's entitled to an IEP that includes a statement of the transition service needs of the IEP under the applicable component of the child's IEP that focuses on child course study. By the way, I copied this right from the law. At age 16 or younger, when determined appropriately by the IEP team, each student is entitled to an IEP that includes a statement of needed transition services for the child, including, when appropriate, a statement of interagency responsibilities or needed linkages. One thing that I struggle with, and where you're all important in this big picture, is getting school districts and these other agencies on the same page. I think that's a huge gap all over the place because I'll take an agency like OVR, and I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not really well versed in all the agencies in this area, but I don't like the fact that they say, look, we don't really open a case until maybe the second semester of the junior year. Well, to me, and I don't know, maybe that's what they're supposed to do, but I'd like them to be involved sooner to help us make decisions on, hey, how can you help this kid out from a working perspective once they're done with school. So common outside agencies, OVR, if your child has a TSS, which is a therapeutic support staff, that may be an agency. Boy, I'm learning all about them. I didn't have them in Canton. There's 4 of them down here in the Lycoming County area, and they all want to play by a different rule book. And I don't work well in gray. So it's been a challenge for me to get these 4 agencies to work how I perceive them or how I think they should work in my classrooms. But they're all coming from a different perspective. And of course you have HOPE. There's all sort of HOPE. There's an Explore program that the IU has where the kids go out into the community and do get work experience. So there's all sorts of agencies out there for the kids. But again, it's tricky. Some special ed directors may be a little more proactive in getting them involved than others. Again, just the nature of the beast that we work in. Because, like I said, getting everybody on the same page, it's easier to get 5 people on the same page than it is 15. So,
Eric, can I interject there just
Yeah.
briefly? I know my experience, we didn't even discuss transition until he was a senior in high school. And it didn't even happen until we had the transitional council meeting.
yep.
And then we had representatives from all these agencies, and I've heard other people say the same thing. They sit there and they're like, ugh. And then when it comes to them, they give you a quick little rehearsed blurb, throw some papers at you, and then you leave the room, and where do you go? How do you get started? How do I qualify? So that's one of the things that we're trying to do is get all that information and have it here so we can talk about that and then have someone talk to us about transition, because you do get to talk to them, but it's a blurb right before your child graduates. There's
Yeah.
no pre-planning until that point, so you're jumping off a cliff when they graduate by yourself.
Yeah. It's generally not so much the case if it's a more severely disabled child, but like maybe a straight learning disabled child, that may be the case now. And I understand. I mean, I believe that has happened.
Yeah.
There was something I wanted to add to that. But yeah, I think they do the transition council 11th grade now. They do it 11th grade year, and I know my district, we're having 4 of them. And get the parents involved in those. We have trouble getting parents into those
Yeah.
transition council meetings.
There are some districts where they will not transition someone who has an MR diagnosis.
See, they're
There's
the
life
ones
skills
that I
classes.
feel
They're the ones
need
who
it
need
most.
it. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
life skills kids that don't get it. If
Yeah.
they're learning disabled or emotional support,
Yeah.
they can get help. But if you're
Sure.
MR, the services aren't necessarily there. It's a different set of services.
Oh, I know what I wanted to add to that. Please tell your parents, please, 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 please. It's difficult to tell a parent this sometimes, but I had this experience when I was in Canton, and Canton's kind of unique and they cover 3 districts. So I was working out of different MHID offices, especially with children with more severe disabilities. I really struggled with the fact, and I came out and said this statement finally to the family, but it's important for parents to understand that tragedies happen in life, and as much as they want to say, my kid, I will take care of my kid to the day I die, a lot of times that's not going to be the reality, because as the kid gets older, for whatever reason, there may be things, they're maybe physically, as they grow older, they get physically too big, and if they have issues at home where they're attacking you as a mother or you as a father, you may not be able to control them. And I think of just one family who I offered services. I brought them to the MHID office. We tried to get everything set up. Didn't want it. I followed up here just this summer just to find out how the kiddo was, and she was like, oh my gosh, I need to get her somewhere. And the conversation I had with mom was, here's what you need to prepare for. And nobody wants to have this conversation, but if something happens with you and dad, or you and grandma, or you're in a car accident, and you're to perish, what are we going to do with this kid? You need to have a plan in place. So I'm not saying push to get them in group homes and all these things. I'm not saying that at all. But prepare parents and let them know it's important to have plans in place. I'm not going to force anything on you, but if that tragic event happens, we want to make sure that your child's taken care of. And you have a lot of parents that they're going to take, and they'll tell you, I'll take care of this kid to the day I die. And that's great, and I hope you can, and I hope you live a long life together. But we all get older, and people are difficult kids can be difficult. Okay, that's transition. On the bottom of page 4, that box will be filled in if your child is generally in a vocational technical program. In Lycoming County, it sits, unless you're, Williamsport, I believe, has their own. All the rest of us go to East Lycoming School District. Up in the northern tier, it's NTCC, Northern Tier Career Center, over in Towanda. Page 5 and 6 is the actual plan. What are you looking for in here? 2 things: services and activities. Let me make sure I get this right. A service is something that occurs over time, an IEP goal. If your child has a reading comprehension goal, reading comprehension better be in this grid. And you'll see a little star next to it because the state's told us you got to denote the difference between a service and an activity. An activity is a one-time thing. Maybe we're in 10th grade, we tour a Northern Tier Career Center. So that won't have a star, but that's an activity we're doing. Or we're taking a career exploration course. So again, it's recommended that you address at least 2. Straight learning support kids, basically what you're going to see is post-secondary heavy. Statements in both the others, maybe saying, hey, look, the IEP team at this time believes that Johnny will possess the skills to be full-time competitively employed upon leaving high school, and the same thing with independent living, can take care of all the basic needs in independent living. All right, next page is new. It's the new one. This could be an all-night thing. Back to that adequate yearly progress, AYP. Here's where we address those statewide assessments. We are in a 3-year transition right now, just so you're aware, of moving from PSSAs to Keystone exams. Okay, this year, every 11th grader in the state of Pennsylvania will take the Keystone exam. In biology, there you go, biology, composition, literature, and algebra 1. Next year, I think they're going to introduce, I think, the 6 to 8 grade span, but we're shifting over to the Keystone exam. It's no longer, and we're also shifting from the Pennsylvania state standards to the Common Core standards. So we're having a statewide curriculum change. So now instead of the PSSA being aligned to the Pennsylvania state standards, the Common Core standards are what drives the Keystone exams.
Will we still have PASA for our kids?
Good question. PASA, yes, will exist this year. Can't speak beyond this year. But the PSSAM, gone. Not offering that this year. PSSAM, Pennsylvania State, the modified test. Here's how we use that. And you know what? In my opinion, they didn't use that correctly either. You can only assign. The deal is the state says, all right, you can assign this PSSAM to up to 2% of your kids. Well, there's a 2% threshold. Now that 2% threshold means, all right, I can assign. Here's what I did. I went to 5%. What the 2% means is they're only going to count towards AYP up to 2% of the kids that score proficient. Chances are to be qualified for the PSSAM, you have to go back 3 to 5 years and look at their PSSA scores, and you got to pick the kids that are at below basic and not showing progress. So I assigned 5% of the kids to that, knowing I have a better chance of 5% reaching the 2% than I do picking 2% and them all getting proficient. There was some strategy you had to use there, but that's what the PSSAM is. Same content level. That what they did is trick the kids. They put more space in the paper, bigger font. Same deal. They just made accommodations within the test, but it's gone.
Now PASA, didn't that used to be that was a completely adaptive test. I mean, there actually could even be a person with that student, I mean, hand over hand, helping them to complete the test. That's the PASA, was really adaptive.
Video, you can do a
Video.
videotape or
Yeah.
narrative.
Videotape.
Yeah, yeah.
My son was videotaped.